Today's show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Get unrestricted access to worldwide content at expressvpn.com/inside. After what seems like a steady stream of discouraging news for PlayStation fans, Sony finally dropped a bit of good news yesterday when they officially overturned their decision to close down the PlayStation Store on the PlayStation 3 and the Vita. $70 games, the loss or outright rejection of significant exclusive titles, and old clock batteries turning PS4s into paperweights are just a few of the factors contributing to unrest in the fandom. Now, at least, Sony has reversed course on one of their more recent and frustrating decisions. The president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, Jim Ryan, posted to the PlayStation blog himself saying, "Recently, we notified players that PlayStation Store for PS3 and PS Vita devices was planned to end this summer. Upon further reflection, however, it's clear that we made the wrong decision here. So today, I'm happy to say that we will be keeping the PlayStation Store operational for PS3 and PS Vita devices. While support for the PSP is still scheduled to end July 2nd, the decision to maintain access to the PlayStation Store for PS3 and Vita owners is a big win for game preservation as well as fans of classic games." According to the blog, the decision was based on the revelation that there were still plenty of customers interested and willing to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and PS Vita for the foreseeable future. It's a slightly humorous framing considering the massive amount of backlash Sony received after the news to end support for their legacy platforms just suddenly appeared on the PlayStation support page last month. In addition to a lot of upset fans across message boards and social media, there were a number of posts that went up detailing lists of games that would be affected or just gone forever after the shutdown. Physical copies of PS3 and Vita games started skyrocketing across the internet, and those worried about losing access to their old favorites rushed to the digital storefronts and started buying up games en masse. This increase in commercial interest is probably what actually piqued Sony's interest and got them to overturn their previous decision. Regardless of what got them to actually change their mind, it wasn't a great look. The news that Sony would have essentially been removing access to thousands of games fell in stark contrast to Microsoft's R&D efforts over the past couple years, which has sought to make as many Xbox and Xbox 360 games backwards compatible with the Xbox Series X and S as possible. Now, this comparison is only a small part of a larger narrative that's recently been forming around Sony's lack of messaging around PlayStation products and services. As the value of Xbox's Game Pass continues to increase, making large third-party titles like Outriders available at launch, PlayStation owners are waiting for Sony to announce their own similar service, which has been teased in the past. Surprisingly, even MLB The Show, which is a franchise developed by Sony and has been exclusive to PlayStation consoles for over a decade, is launching on Xbox and Game Pass this week. While it's probably a good thing for the franchise and baseball fans overall, it's a number of small digs like this and Microsoft's aggressive acquisition of every studio under the sun that has some PlayStation owners questioning the long-term value proposition of their shiny new PS5. Of course, there are a ton of awesome PlayStation exclusives still on their way, like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Deathloop, Horizon Forbidden West, and God of War Ragnarok, but a recent Bloomberg article written by Jason Schreier revealed some internal strife at Sony around a possible overcommitment to only the biggest AAA games. Fans were unhappy to learn that significant resources were being put into a remake of the original Last of Us, Sony's Japan studio was being shut down, and that a proposal for Days Gone 2 was rejected in favor of having Sony Bend work on a new Uncharted game instead. That last one has probably seen the most outcry as fans felt like Days Gone as a franchise was robbed of its breakout moment, much like Uncharted 2 had seen. A Change.org petition to have Sony greenlight Days Gone 2 has jumped from 10,000 to 50,000 signatures since last week. It's pretty clear at this point that there is growing unrest among vocal groups within the PlayStation community, and some are even calling for Jim Ryan to resign, which is kind of ridiculous, but you know, it's the internet. As for Sony's decision to keep the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores around, it was a much needed win, but it's unfortunate it took so much backlash and vocal support from PlayStation fans and critics for the top brass at Sony to realize they are sitting on top of a nostalgic gold mine, as well as a significant chunk of gaming history. They shouldn't have to be told things like that because they should probably have a clearer sense of what their audience actually wants. That they don't is a larger part of their current issues around messaging. But what do you think? Is Sony doomed by going all in on the biggest AAA games, tiring out once great franchises and turning their back on what made games like The Last of Us great in the first place? Or is everything gonna be just fine as soon as those big titles start dropping? Let us know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.